But if you could gather around. Great, thank you. Thank you, everybody. We've still got a lot of people coming in. Okay. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for the launch of Public London Activating the City. My name is Benjamin O'Connor. I'm a director here at NLA. I'm sure you all know what we do, but NLA is London's built environment community. We bring together built environment professionals, politicians, and members of the public to learn about, debate, and ultimately have a voice on the future shape of London. This evening, we're going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of the LFA, the London Festival of Architecture, and also launch our special retrospective publication, Public London. The book and the exhibition on the wall over there look back at some of the most momentous projects of the last 2 decades, from master plans that have contributed to shaping London's urban landscape to small neighbourhood interventions that have dramatically improved the lives of local Londoners. The publication, exhibition, and online project directory explore what constitutes a successful and democratic public realm today, the role of co-creation and partnerships, and how we can ensure that places are fit for purpose in the long term. I'd like to say a big thank you to our champions on the project. That's Greystar, Quintain, Brookfield Properties, Atkins Realis, and our supporters, the City of London Corporation, Momentum Transport Consultancy, and Gillespie's. Also a special thanks to all the people who shared their time, expertise, and insights, and their own research through interviews, discussion, and participation in NLA workshops and events. And also a final thank you to our researchers, Cecilia, who I have seen, and Jack, who I haven't seen around, who are from Future Places Studio, who led on our research. So you're going to get a copy of the publication when you leave, but what does it show? So there are some up on the exhibition here, but we've got a timeline of the past 20 years of public realm activation. A lot of that has come through the festival, so do take a look at those projects. We have our placemakers toolkit, which is very handily just here, which is a comprehensive guide for designing, implementing, and managing public spaces. It's based on best practice, learning from the past 20 years of public realm design and activation, and it echoes the 6 pillars of placemaking laid out in our New London Agenda, which is also just behind you on the wall there. The essay focuses on 7 key themes in conversation with some of the pioneering change makers of today. This essay contemplates what constitutes a successful and democratic public realm. So through this process, something really interesting came out, both through the research, but also from talking to many of you in the room. It's become quite clear that one of the key challenges here is a lack of clarity on the overall pipeline and strategy for London's public space. We feel quite strongly that London needs a comprehensive review and accessible pipeline of public realm projects to enable more joined-up thinking and to create a clear narrative in our public spaces across London. I'm sure we're going to be hearing some of this in a minute. This could take a similar approach actually to our tall buildings work. So many of you will know us for our tall buildings work. It's the 10th year we've done our tall buildings annual survey, but we think actually London needs something similar for public realm. So that's something we're going to be thinking about over the coming year. And if that's something you're interested in getting involved in, please do contact us. And then finally, before I hand over, our Public London project has featured a lot of key projects from NLA LFA competitions, which we run through our NLA Collaborate arm. And that's from small-scale interventions to major public buildings and master plans in collaboration with design practices, cultural organisations, local authorities, business improvement districts, and landowners. So if you've got any challenges, any problems you need fixing, we can try and help you with that through competitions and commissions. So do get in touch if you are interested. Okay, I'm now going to hand over to our first speaker, who doesn't really need any introduction. I'm sure you all know who this is. We've got Jules Pipe, CBE, who is Deputy Mayor for Planning, Regeneration and the Fire Service at the GLA.
Thanks very much, Benjamin. I'm really flattered to be asked here tonight to do this, not just because it's the NLA. Benjamin, thank you very much for the invite, but to actually be on the same agenda as Lucy, who obviously has done an extraordinary number of places across London and activated them brilliantly, and has a long history of that. So yeah, I'm very flattered to be alongside her tonight addressing this issue. So thank you for the introduction, Benjamin, and for the NLA for hosting this event, which I think really does celebrate a whole group of projects that have transformed London's public realm over the last 2 decades. Cultural placemaking, place activation, meanwhile uses. And I think London's public realm is really at the heart of the city's civic and cultural health. It forms the backdrop for Londoners' day-to-day lived experiences. It gives a sense of identity to neighbourhoods. And the Mayor has certainly long championed the importance of high-quality public spaces through the London Plan. There are things like the Public London Charter. There's been investment in projects that I think really enhances places and the experiences of Londoners who live and work in them as well as visit. There's the Mayor's Good Growth by Design programme, and that's really been at the forefront of promoting design research and guidance into topics such as social value of our high streets, the experience of children and young people when they're out and about in our public realm. Gender safety, the work that, again, Lucy's been involved with on the issue of women and young girls and the public realm. And looking at how we can reflect accessibility and inclusion right in the heart of the design of our urban spaces. And the book that's being launched this evening, I think, is in part a really great retrospective of projects that exemplify its title, Public London, Activating the City. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to briefly reflect on how sort of meanwhile use and interim uses, specifically have played a really valuable role in activating and designing London's public realm and taking us forward to a better London. I mean, we've gone on a journey, I think, with meanwhile use in London, from a sort of a radical and informal, experimental beginning to a real kind of what happens in the present day. It's kind of a broader acceptance as an urban activation strategy. I think what was seen as risk, I think now we're moving perhaps more into seeing it as opportunity, and we're now seeing meanwhile or pop-up or interim activities as part of the everyday journey from a potential regeneration site through to a long-term place. And I think some things that began as meanwhile have proven so popular over the years that they've ended up enduring and being part of the finished article. And I think there are many of those examples showcased in the book. I mean, meanwhile use, I think, is an interim uses, I think, are an approach that can often be misunderstood. There are certainly some opportunistic and undesirable examples, and whenever I talk about meanwhile use, I can't help but say, there's always got to be understanding on both sides, from both the landowner and the developer and the people who are going to be executing the meanwhile use. Right from the beginning, there's an agreement about for how long and for what. Otherwise, it ends up undermining the reputation and the possibilities of other people doing meanwhile uses. So you've always got to have a solid understanding between partners about particularly about the longevity. But when it's done well, the approach has so much to offer in both activating the city's public spaces and also, I think this is absolutely crucial, it enables a thinking about the longer term, about the approach that we can take to regeneration in a more thoughtful way. At its best, it can invite more people into the conversation and into the process of change, and crucially at a much earlier stage. I think one of the key successes of the adoption of a meanwhile use approach has been its role in sparking community engagement, which is really, really important in a city like London, where, despite our human density, opportunities for really genuine connection and community in reality can be quite limited. And I think the flexible, temporary or pop-up nature of meanwhile projects can often give a broader range of Londoners an opportunity to participate. Particularly local communities that might lack the resources or lack the experience to develop or just to engage with something that's more permanent and being thought up by other people. I think through the Mayor's Good Growth Fund, we've been very active in this area. For example, we've been supporting the community in Angel Edmonton, in Enfield, with investment for a package of regeneration interventions on 4th Street. There was an urban room, there was repurposing of existing garages as affordable workspace and studio space for local businesses. There was placemaking through interventions in the public realm. And I was really pleased to see that 4th Street the project was a winner of the NLA's 2020 New London Awards Meanwhile category. At their best, I think Meanwhile projects are a way to test ideas and strategies as part of a design process, as I've said, and at its best they'll inform a longer-term vision for a place. They might be less meanwhile and more a worthwhile step or on a longer journey, especially in parts of London where major regeneration is planned. An example of that, I think, is where we've invested more than £500,000 alongside Peabody to support an experimental estate regeneration project in Southall. And that's transformed 36 abandoned garages and about 2,000 square metres of undercroft space on the Havelock estate in Southall. And that's all now, meanwhile, social spaces and business spaces. And it's really delivering a tangible community benefit through what will be a long period of change and regeneration as that whole area is redeveloped. And the project really seeks to build the capacity of local enterprises and community groups, nurturing new local community partnerships and really embedding local voices in the longer term strategy and the design for the neighbourhood, and doing that all at a really early stage. It adopts an approach that really maps and builds on community strengths, you know, the networks, the volunteering, the entrepreneurship. And the testing and refinement of ideas alongside the community, I think, is a really key part of the approach. And it allows spaces like Havelock to take on a much more dynamic and flexible life and that can adapt to community needs. And where meanwhile use is, I think, applied sensitively with the involvement of the community, I think it remains a really valuable and flexible approach that really drives local innovation. I mean, in closing, I just want to say that I think it's really, really great to see the NLA's latest publication continue to make the case for meanwhile use in the future alongside other great approaches for supporting the development of our public realm. I think these really complement the thought leadership and delivery that we've tried to champion at City Hall and will continue to champion in order to really support local communities, local economies, and really strengthen Londoners' connection to the places in which they live and work, in which I think is the greatest city in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jules. Okay, our next speaker is Lucy Musgrave, who's founding director of Publica. And Publica have been involved in a number of the projects in the publication and, of course, work with the GLA very closely. But I got to know Lucy rather well, I think last summer when we went for tea or coffee outside Somerset House, when she introduced me to her cartwheel challenge. So if you haven't seen Lucy's social, do check it out. I think I've seen Lucy do at least 3 or 4 now. We do one at LREF at the Barbican as well. I'm sure if you ask her, she'll tell you all about it. Lucy.
Thanks, Benjamin, and thank you very much for having me, and thank you, Jules, for your very, very generous words. Congratulations, can you hear me okay? Congratulations to the London Festival of Architecture and the NLA on your birthday, and to everyone in the room and out in the city on this lovely summer night who make these projects happen. I'm going to talk to you about partnership working and a very short overview of some recent history. So what do all these great case studies in the book that you're going to see later tell us about the way that we design and plan for the public realm, creativity and civic amenity in London? We are connected spatially, socially, culturally, economically through a shared collective use of our streets and spaces of this amazing city. This event is about the care that goes into our public realm, and we should all be really proud of it. I've built my professional life around the notion that the public realm holds symbolic as well as functional value, that the social and spatial infrastructure that we all share is what makes our neighbourhoods vital and inclusive. And that, with the ambition of partnership working, strategic civic urbanism, good design and leadership, we can completely change the city. Some in the room, as old as me, will remember 40 years ago. In 1984, I came to London and there were huge tracts of land sitting fallow, and the population of London was still falling. Everywhere you could see the neglect of streets, parks, open spaces, and garden squares with dereliction and decay. The palpable frustration of Londoners asking who is in charge and why don't things work could be heard daily. To give an example, the South Bank wasn't deemed safe to walk on, and astoundingly, the workers in the IPC Tower had to take a daily minibus across to Covent Garden to get their lunch. Fast forward for 20 years, the date of the last NLA publication, and it's hard to imagine, but London's government had only recently been reinstated after 13 years of us being the only capital city without any citywide government. Many of us argued and lobbied why London's streets and spaces deserved attention, that this collective project on the dignity of everyday life should be elevated and taken really seriously, that our streets and spaces shouldn't be places of hostility and endangerment, but of care and connectedness, beauty and life. In 2004, so 20 years ago, the congestion charge was introduced, and then 10 years later, in 2014, the first ultra-low emission zone to address the silent killer, air pollution. And Lucy Saunders, perhaps one of the, more than anyone else in the city, who has changed the whole agenda for London, introduced and produced her Healthy Streets Toolkit, linking health, active travel, clean air and inclusion. At that time, Oxford Street was 3 times higher than the legal limit for air pollution, with annual limits breached within the first few days of each new year. Road safety and pedestrian and cyclist fatalities and collisions were devastating families and communities. And an inadequate, poor quality public realm embarrassed everybody and infuriated citizens and property owners alike. Every street and journey should be accessible, safe, and a place shared by many where you can meet strangers and where we're all proud. We argued that the city could be welcoming and connected, a place of inclusion. It could symbolically and functionally offer dignity to all citizens, making an equitable and fair city. So what happened? In the past 2 decades, with many hands and creativity and civic leadership, the resetting of the public realm is thriving in London, as evidenced by your publication. And I want to shout out a few. There are many important players in this city, but a few. Along with many, we advocated with Trevor Phillips and others for the reinstatement of London's government way back. Isabel Dedring chaired the Roads Task Force and asked a key question: how do we move people and goods around the city, and what shall we do with the spaces in between buildings, starting with the major one-way traffic gyrators? Throughout my own professional life and the work we've delivered at Publica, we've seen firsthand the appetite and the impact and the successes of cross-sector collaborations and partnership. So I'm going to talk about a few. I've mentioned Lucy Saunders devised amazing Healthy Streets Toolkit, but working hand in hand with Jules and the GLA, including with many others, but including Publica, we've helped build research and advocacy and evidence for an incredible suite of policies called Good Growth by Design, led by Louise Duggan and Sarah Considine and many, many others in the team. A whole systems approach to urban change that the new national government next week and many international city governments are looking to learn from. It's really, really comprehensive. As a mayoral design advocate, I helped Jules set up Pooja Agrawal and Finn Williams' public practice, and with Eliza Fior and Julian Lewis and many others, helped with the GLA set up the London Public Charter, ensuring the publicness of the public realm. Publica and Erect led on the Making London a Child-Friendly City, which is about independent child and young people's mobility through the city. And Publica has, for the past 4 years, worked with the fantastic Amy Lamé and her team, helping the GLA lead, advocate, and write all the guidance on the evening and night time. Our public realm at night is critical for this city to thrive and for its citizens. And the new policy agenda that Jules has mentioned for him and for the mayor, the women, girls, and gender diverse people's safety in the public realm policy and training for our whole sector. There are so many excellent officers and members in the boroughs, in both inner London and in the outer boroughs, and I just want to mention a very few. We were asked to produce the evidence base and the policy for the removal of general traffic from Bank Junction, so a massive shout out to Michael Cassidy, to the late Michael Wellbank, to Victor Callister, and the campaigning of Peter Murray and many others for cyclist and pedestrian safety. With the business improvement districts, and particularly Ruth Dustin and Jace Tyrrell when he was there, the leadership and investment from the great estates and many of the universities in central London and key local authorities like Westminster, we've led on some big visions and evidence and consensus building on audacious projects like the vision for Aldwych Strand, which has been beautifully showcased in the book with LDA's award-winning design. And congratulations to everybody from the team. I know there are many people on that team here tonight. We've been pushing a grand projet for Oxford Street, for the river, helping with the removal of the one-way traffic gyratory at Baker Street, and a really big vision for Marble Arch to move the inner ring road and reconnect the Royal Park with Oxford Street, one of our and the Portman Estate's smaller projects. Anyway, incredible public and private sector working. Toby Courtauld of GPE's belief in our vision and the leadership of officers and members at Westminster City Council and New West End Company. And because of that, Publica was able to completely redesign Hanover Square, Bond Street, Burlington Gardens, only possible because of the outstanding and expert officers like Graham King and the late Rosemary McQueen, who championed the principles of civic amenity for all. Publica's CIC, our community interest company, has been training young people and building a campaign for an inclusive city, starting with women, girls, and gender diverse people. These are massive issues, and these demonstration projects are only possible because of the public, the private, and the third sector's confidence that London can be inclusive and we can make it work for all. The book tonight that you're going to see shows a story of an incredible step change in public realm design. London is unrecognisable from 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. The strategic design behind this revolution is down to partnership working, a shared belief and confidence that every street and space can connect us, can address climate and biodiversity, social isolation and inequality. And the next big ideas? To deliver this agenda, to understand that community wealth building and care is needed for every community and every neighbourhood. We should recognise that by collaborating with communities and with people with very different lived experiences, we can set the right brief and build a more inclusive city. Congratulations to the NLA. I didn't mention my cartwheels, but it's called a cartwheel a day. I do a cartwheel every day to fundraise for my nurses at UCLH, and so if you Google cartwheel a day, you can see. I won't do one here tonight.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Incredibly inspiring. A huge thank you to Lucy and Jules, and for all of you for coming along to celebrate the launch of the publication. Just a quick note that the publication is not all we are doing on Public London. We've got a programme of events following the launch, so including an evening talk on the 16th of July on rewilding London. We've also got a Petricuccia on arts in the public realm on the 17th of July, so do come along to that. And this exhibition is open until the 31st of August. And of course, we would invite you to check out the website where the full project showcase of all the projects are. Some of them are on the TV screen over there as well. So enjoy the publication and please do enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much.